And welcome back to the Intrinsic Minds podcast, where it is not about what you think, but it's about how you think. And today we'll be embarking on another journey, another planet, which will be a Martian conversation, the Martian principle.
Mhm.
But before we do, let's catch up on Gio's. Gio? How was your Fourth of July?
A very hot and heated moment.
Hot.
Yeah,
That
no,
makes sense.
yeah, right. Hot and heated, a little fiery and stuff. Little
Right.
tempers flared here and there. It's always good, especially in the humid actual heat. So, but other than that, all is well, all is good. I've been doing the Virgo shit, get myself ready. Gonna be gone for a little over 2 weeks, come the 17th. So we will be taking a pause a little bit because I'll be in Italy. And yeah, but we're good. We're organized. We're getting
Yeah,
there.
yeah. But it's I know I mentioned it last episode, but the solar flare, right? We're breaking records now. So you
Yeah.
said hot and heavy, and you said flared up. Well,
Mm-hmm.
so is the solar activity, and it seems to be that there is like a weird. And I've been saying it now for like 2 weeks. Like it's a weird shift in the air. Like you could totally sense it now. It's getting stronger and stronger. The world's getting weirder.
Mm.
So it's why I love channels like Quantum of Conscience, because he makes me feel normal in a way, because he's, you watch people and what they're going through, and it's just, we do live in weird times, people. It is just a weird fucking time, and I guess just embrace it. And you know the flaring up, man, the solar flares, and the agitation, and the concern about the world is all for real. And it's ironic because we are going into a North Node sign, and actually, I think on the day you leave, I want to say it's like the 17th or 18th. It's going into Aries, which is
Might be, yeah.
Mars
Yeah.
ruled.
That's right. Yep. It'll be
Yeah,
between that, the 17, 18, depending on where you are. Yeah. Yeah, it just feels like in life in general, when you're like anywhere you peek around a corner, it seems like something is like about to break at times.
yeah,
And that could be a good thing, that could be a bad thing, that could kind of be like ripping off a band-aid at some points and stuff. So it's, yeah, I think closing out this year, going to next year. I mean, I know this is constantly always said, but I think it'll be pretty interesting when you're kind of like along the ride now of life and all the different types of permeating energies that are occurring, things that are coming in, going out, and stuff. And you're ready to meld with it and be part of it instead of resisting it. So yeah, I think sometimes we should take that attitude with it, even though things don't look too great sometimes.
no, and they don't, and but I think, like, I don't know if people are either desensitized, they're just used to it, or it's kind of just
Mm.
like fuck all at this point.
A
But
little
like,
bit of all.
yeah, and on top of that, I mean, I keep seeing this thing about with like the whole ascension consciousness thing is like,
Mm.
you do have like a group of people that I think are kind of snapping out of it right now, and you have people that have been
Yeah.
awake, and so like you're watching people wake up too, and it's like a little more chaotic, because I would assume that the people are waking up later are going to have a harder time with it, not only because of the timing, but because there was a reason they didn't wake up to begin with. People that were more resistant to the change, more resistant to the energy, more resistant to everything that was happening. That's a little more out of this world than what they're used to. And, that's why I said I could thank people like Quantum of Conscience, Matt McKinley, or any of the astrologers that I've been following for so long, or any of this stuff that I've been into. I could thank the 2012 prophecy and all that, which woke me up, 9/11 and all this stuff that I had woken up so young, that this is just another walk in the fucking park at this point. And just like,
Mm.
yeah, you got to kind of balance yourself with the energies, and it's not easy. I'm not claiming that I'm, doing it any better than a lot of other people, but when it comes down to it, yeah, the energy's high. You just got to ride the wave, and if anything, jump into your Mars, right? Take action.
Mm-hmm.
Really kind of hone in. And I think the next year being ruled, or 18 months being ruled by Aries and Mars and all that, it is going to be about what serves you, and what's about, because Mars is about self, and it's about your own
Mm-hmm.
drive, and what you're passionate about and all that. And it's supposed to be that go-getter, masculine type of energy. So I think that's what the next 18 years kind of, and we're gonna be experiencing. And on the other end, when it comes to mundane astrological points of view. If there were to be any war, I mean, I would guess that while a North Node was going through the sign of war, that's what this is going to bring because that's what Mars rules. So
Yeah, that's a great point you made though, because honestly, yeah, if anybody, if you, I mean, if you've even been paying attention to what we're saying, but even many astrologers and everything, like a lot of the time, I mean, there is a lot of astrologers saying something else, but a lot of this time we've been in has been, the past couple of years has been a very receptive month, going inward, trying to prepare ourselves, figure out what we value, uh, you know, going beneath the surface and trying to transform maybe things within us and stuff like that, and and constantly hitting this wall when we try to like force our will or something like that. And maybe now coming into the shift, I think like what you're saying is right, that it's like we still got that time to, we're kind of nearing that roundabout here where it's like now more of the Martian implementations may start to come up where we need to kind of pursue our will and do those things and get out there, create some sort of action and overcome some sort of fear in those sort of ways. So this would be a good episode to kind of like, even touch up on, maybe how to do some of those things through that Mars energy and the Mars in our chart and stuff. Because yeah, I mean, I think that's really what the key thing for us to learn this past few times. I could speak for myself where I know that I've come into a lot of resistance trying to exude any sort of personal will of mine in some sort of sense. Not saying that I had to completely become docile or anything, but a lot of surrender was necessary. And hey, why try to do the doing energy when you don't even have it fully figured out on its formulation and constructs and stuff like that, and how it best suits you and stuff like, and how you can prepare it to be more beneficial in that way. So yeah,
yeah, great.
I guess this will be cool to kind of go into. I
Yeah,
didn't really think about it, but yeah, you're definitely right on that point.
yeah, to add the flavor, right? Of that,
Mhm.
it's the nodal axis is shifting and now our focus is shifting. And, thinking about it, right, the past 18 months was like kind of redefining what we value. And with the South Node being in Scorpio, it's really also about learning what to let go. And whether that's an attitude or an emotion, a person, a job, things that don't serve you. And with the North Node in Taurus, you'd expect, because we talked about Venus last week, and go listen to that if you want to hear more about uh, the Venus archetype and all of that and the principle. But yeah, it's now that we're walking into this, it's like you should by now maybe should know what you really value, what you truly appreciate, and what you want to really go for, and all of that. And with that, now use this Aries energy to really be the leader in your own life. And with the South Node in Libra, it's really cutting off the people or partnerships or things, or doing things for other people more than, like, right now is going to be a me focused type of thing. It doesn't mean become a selfish prick or anything like that, but it is with the Aryan energy. I think this is going to be the time where we birth a lot of new leaders and people that are going to be on the forefront. And that's what, using this energy correctly, I feel like that's what would come out of it on the other end, is people now becoming a leader in their own life. And then with that, coming into the Pisces North Node, I would say that then how can you use that for the collective and the good for the, whole for itself, right? But we have to build ourselves up as leaders now that we know what we value. And for the people that are waking up maybe a little later or not as self-aware of it all and all that, that the people that are, it's our responsibility to be, take the initiative to really do
Yeah.
that. And that's a great Mars word as well, right? Like it's like, and I'd said it, right? Venus is what you desire, and then Mars is how you get it, right? Mars is going to be how you take action, the masculine principle, because Venus and Mars are married. So yeah, and that's where we're at. So yeah, it's a perfect time to talk about it.
Yeah. That'd be a good time to, yeah, definitely a good time to birth more of a stronger leadership role come these times and stuff. And like you're saying, when we get into that Pisces shift of the nodes, and then to kind of approach it differently than the leaderships we've seen, and this divisiveness and egotistical way of coming out with who's got the answers and stuff too. Um, I really do. I hope for that to be more of the appearance in the collective. Um, but yeah, it also, it's all going to start with us doing our own individual work and stuff, and that's been the biggest lesson, is to individuate in that sort of sense and figure out who the fuck we are. But yeah, like this video. Let's get going. Does I want to just start with like a little. I'm going to read a little excerpt just to kind of
Hit us with it.
give us the significations of Mars. All right, then this is from Cosmos and Psyche, by Richard Tarnas. But Mars is the principle of energetic force, the impulse and the capacity to assert, to act and move energetically and forceful, to have an impact, to press forward and against, to defend and offend, to act with sharpness and ardor, and the tendency to experience aggressiveness, anger, conflict, harm, violence, forceful physical energy, to be combative, competitive, courageous, vigorous. It is also Ares, the god of war in Greek mythology. Now, a lot of that sounds like stuff we're very much so used to when it comes to Mars. We see it as very fiery and angry and in that element and stuff like that. But I think there's also understanding that we have to remember that those are also a lot of times just reactions of things, where it's not necessarily always got to be that it's this combative anger, argumentative, and trying to always come at it with such force. That is a potential, but I think more so we should redirect that energy into why are we doing that? Well, if we feel like the will is being blocked, which that would be a suppression of Mars, and that could come from many things. Maybe you have Mars in detriment in your chart or something like that. But when your will is being suppressed, of course, your reaction is going to be to, maybe want to run in and burn everything down in that sort of sense, or be on guard and stuff, where you could redirect that energy into understanding how to overcome some sort of fear using that Martian energy.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I mean, and I think the traditional ways of looking at it all is usually it's always correct, but it's always about context. It's about knowing your sign, knowing your house, like any other planets we've talked about. And so it's really important to understand those basic traditional ways of seeing Mars. But yeah, it is also about how is that going to be colored in? And it's funny because it really does relate to what everything you just said made me think about the next 18 months. And I go, yeah, it is what we need to do now. Like it is what we really need to jump into within our own experiences, and how ironic, right? Chiron, the wounded healer, passing through Aries. And so I feel a healing of the masculine expression of energy is about to come. And that's now, because it's a main focus, something we should all look at within our own charts and our loved ones, and see what we all need to do to really learn to take action and really be the go-getters in our own life, and how we could help assist, the collective come in the next 18 months. And first things first, right, is like, be the change you want to see in the world, right? And that's kind of what the healthy expression to me of what, Mars would be, right? Is like, be that change, like comes through Taurus. We learn our values. Okay. So now how can we express that in a healthy way through our Mars to really see, how our drive works. Like Gio and I have Mars in Pisces. So we have it in a water sign, which it doesn't like to be in. But we also, I think I've always looked at it this way, like for say a Mars and Pisces out there, is you have to be really in tune with your spiritual ideals and really tuned in and ready and willing to help the collective with that drive. You have to have, I just think ideals, like your ideals have to be like, I get very inspired, or my energy, my Martian energy comes, arises from the correct mode of thinking through ideals that I have developed through the way, through that spirituality of Pisces. But where's yours, right? Where's, anybody listening, what element, what sign, what house is your Mars sitting in? And that's how you're going to want to have to take your action. And you could really see your own rhythm through that.
Yeah, big time. I mean, that's always going to be the key factors coming into that, yes, we always talk about going inward and stuff too, but without being, repetitive of that thing. It's also now, speaking of Mars and that type of energy and coming from an instinctual place, um and also a place of action and assertion. It's like, okay, now it's, being able to channel that energy and move it in certain directions as well, that aren't going to cause that self combustion, or to even waste the energy and let it fizzle out as well.
Right. Yeah, and we could talk about the rulers real quick. We said
Mhm.
Aries, but Scorpio is also the co-ruler and traditional ruler of it as well. So the inward war that we're fighting, what demons do we have to slash within ourselves for us to really also express it as well, right? Because you have the feminine expression of Mars, which is inward, which is Scorpio, be the evening ruler, and it would be more of our psychology, our inward desires, sexual, kind of emotions and feelings and stuff like that, and our passion. But ironically, with that inwardness comes the outwardness, right? Which is the Aries of, being impulsive and ready to go to war for whatever it is that we're ready for, right? So I feel like if you look at the world right now, we are, and how ironic, right? How about this France situation? Talk about Martian
Yeah.
energy, right before the nodes are about to switch, right? Like all of a sudden we have some revolutions happening. You can associate that with Aquarius, but the revolution doesn't happen without war. So whatever form that is. So it seems to me that through the journey that we just went through with figuring out what we value, people have figured it out, and now that Mars is already starting where like it's like we're just putting the tip in, and you could see it. And the whole France thing is crazy right now because that I have a feeling is the flavor of the next 18 months when it comes to what we're all feeling and what we need to be doing. And you could look at it like people are taking that initiative. People are getting aggressive. They're getting that outwardness to it. And it's ironic, by the way, too, because Scorpio, being the other ruler of Mars, is
Mhm.
opposite Taurus, right?
Yeah.
So it's like we had to let go of what we didn't value anymore, Scorpio. We had to cut it off, right? We had to transform. We had to transmute that energy. And now we're switching from that Venus ruled north node to the Mars. So Mars just went from south node to north node. And we're seeing it now. People are tired of it. And that's,
Yeah.
I think, what we figured out about all of ourselves is we're fucking sick of it. And we want to
Exactly.
make change. Right.
And it's funny too, using the nodal signs in that sort of way, and those positions. Like, I also do see it, that it's like, as much as we realized that there was this hidden layer of things going on, and maybe they didn't sit right with us, and a lot of things we didn't agree with and stuff. But I think there was also a tendency to just kind of stay in place, and also, you know maybe take that Taurian side of it, of not wanting to do anything about it as well. Like, yeah, uh maybe kind of let it sink in and stuff like that, but fixate on the thing. It's like, oh well, yeah, I guess I'll deal with it. I guess I'll deal with it. And a little bit of complacency when it comes to certain things. And it's like, now I don't think that attitude's gonna work towards it as well. And I think a lot of people aren't going to be able to sustain themselves in that attitude. And we're going to see those higher expressions of that Mars energy, of, that even the more radical side of that Plutonic energy as well too. Um, but but yeah, I mean, what a perfect time to really get in order with. And I really think, even if you were to look at France's chart and currently now and stuff, I guarantee you there's probably some sort of significant link back to even France's revolution that they had, the French Revolution, and
Oh, I'm sure.
even what's kind of playing along with France's Mars in that chart as well.
And I'm sure other, more astrology based
Oh yeah.
people are going to hit on that. And everyone follow World Astrology Report. That guy's really good at that stuff. But yeah, I could definitely see that it's right on time, right? Like it just seems like the cycle has begun again and it's time for revolution. And it fits the Aquarian thing. But where the Aries comes in too is a great word for Aries is tension, right? So I think with that, like what makes us take action, because if you think of a square in a chart, a square is actually Martian ruled, right? Any square you look at is a Martian energy. It wants to cut, it wants to take action, it's forced, it's conflict and all of that. But tension is a great Mars word because that's, when we get tense, we want to remove that tense energy. But that only comes with taking action. And that's, I think, what a lot of countries are going to be doing now is because everything is so tense and we know what we're on we have more clarity about what we value. That Aries energy is there to assist. Mars is there to assist, to say it's not about just war and killing people or conflict, but it's when it's expressed in the correct manner, it's about the going to war for what you believe or what you value in, right? And so now because of that, we're seeing that already starting to play out. And you look at your own life and see, right? Like where is the tension? And what's the tension between you and your partnerships, you and your career, you and your money, you and your relationship to the society and government and all of that? And knowing what defines your own ego, because Mars rules Aries, rules the first house, which is self, will propel you into a future that it is that you want to create. But you have to know thyself, which is a great phrase for Mars. Know thyself. Yeah. Can't take action if you don't know thyself. So
wow. Yeah, that's true, man. I mean, that's the thing, because the archetype of Mars can be the warrior, either as the aggressor or as the protector too. So the warrior can be both of that, and many different traditions that you do have of mysticism. The warrior, whether a shaman or even like an Eastern discipline, the mystic is considered a spiritual warrior. So that's kind of a lot of what you're saying there too. Like it comes into, yes, fighting for what you believe, but also having the internal fight there too. And whether you have to be the aggressor in a sort of situation, even in a spiritual state, or you have to be the protector. I think a lot of when we speak of like a lot of the other planets, especially when we're talking about Venus and the moon and, even the sun as well too, a little bit of Mercury as well. But a lot of it, there's always notion towards like this internal healing. I think when it comes to Mars, it kind of shows us more so of like, how do we direct energy for healing for ourselves, but also more so, how do we kind of take what we've processed and have learned to adapt to and heal in order to face a fear, whatever it may be. It doesn't mean you're some scared little bitch or something like that. It's just you're kind of being like, okay, well, now I'm going to show what I'm made of, and really put to the test if that aspect of me is healed. So, and that's the other thing too. Mars, we know Mars is its sacred day would be Tuesday, and that's called Tyre's Day after the Norse god Tyre. Tyre, yes, is the god of war, but is also of justice and self-sacrifice. So, in the mythology, he gives his hand in sacrifice to the wolf monster that threatens the Norse gods. But with the sacrifice to the other gods, it's he plays a little bit of kind of like, yes, the warrior, but needs to face the fear of being like, hey, well, it's kill or be killed, but I'm going to do it because I know it's the greater good. And yes, I know that, Mars is also played as, the villain, especially when coming to, the Greek mythologies with Ares and everything stuff too. And what we see in just modern shit that comes on, it always portrays that archetype as well. And sometimes could be like a source of evil in that sort of sense, but it's not all that. It's the source of what goes with being part of like this god of war. And not to mention, in all the mythologies, it's always a lot of the warriors people and a lot of those characters and archetypes, they're always taking guidance from some sort of goddess or some sort of feminine archetype of like a goddess of war in that sort of sense. Because they understand that there needs to be the receptive and tuned nature. So this is where we're balancing the principles of the Venusian and the Martian, the feminine and the masculine aspects. And that's where we need to know where to pull and like the ebb and flow for it and to bring it in and pull it out and stuff too. Because what we said, I think what I said in the past episode too was it's not just about that the fighting part of it. It's not just about that action set. It's understanding the source of pain and fear, and not necessarily evil, but the pain and fear, and being able to go into that mode and go into understanding survival in that sort of sense. Yeah, it may not be life or death survival, but go into that sort of sense in order to transform what's going on. Like we said, that was Mars was the traditional ruler, Scorpio. So that's going to come into play too.
Yeah, and you mentioned the guidance from a goddess. It could be Venus and it could also be the moon, right? Because if you look at the personal build, the individual, and the allegorical aspects to that story, and you apply it to an individual, the sun is, who I am on a soul spirit level. The moon is how I feel. And then with Mercury, it's how I think. And then Venus is, what I like, what I desire, and to an extent on the internal. And so to get guidance on an individual level, use the allegory yourself is, how do you feel about this? And what do you desire from it? Right. So, and what's going to create a good or bad expression of Mars is your feelings and what it is you desire on an internal level, getting the guidance from the inner feminine and saying, if you were to say to Venus, what is it that I value? What is it that I seek out in this life? And then that's going to affect the action taken by the Martian energy, right? So the good or bad comes from those values, from your feelings. How in control are you of those feelings? And that's where you can apply also the inward Mars, the feminine Mars of Scorpio, and say, what do you need to cut? What do you need to go to war with in yourself to become a more integrated and higher vibrational being, to then be fighting for the right thing or the good thing? It's going to dictate what side you're basically on. Is it for self? Is it for other? Is it for everyone? Is it for no one? Is it for the sake of good? Is it for the sake of evil? But it's always going to be dictated by everything that colors in prior. And it goes in order in the solar system. That's right. It's why where it goes the sun, then it goes Mercury, and it goes Venus, and it goes the moon. But the moon would come first technically because it comes after the sun. But in the solar system aspect of it, those things come before Mars, and then we use it symbolically to say this is what's coloring it in. So now when we're going in and hitting the, I guess a good metaphor for Mars is hitting the gas pedal. And that's what Mars is, right? Is the gas pedal. How are we going to assert ourselves, and what's it for? And we need to figure that out, and then also need to use the Scorpion energy of what it is it underneath or inward that we need to also cut and go to war with, then to have that healthy expression of Mars. So yeah, definitely, the whole mythologies, man, they always connect. It's great.
They really do, because that's the other thing too. It's like there's in all the mythologies the other types of like war god forms. A lot of them you see now, like when we speak of them, like have that stigma attached to them of kind of like, whatever, some sort of like good and evil type of thing too. But like, even when you look at the Set and Horus Egyptian mythology and stuff, Set is always looked at as, a lot of times now the god of evil or in some sort of way, but originally was a god of destruction and the desert storm winds, where that's almost that's what is more helpful, I feel like, because it's showing you that more necessary side of chaotic natural events or something like that, right? Say in this form and stuff, because that with those with that destruction and like desert storm winds and stuff, the blowing of the sand, it's creating new mounds, and yes, it could be blocking out your sight momentarily and everything, and it's very harsh on the skin and stuff too. But also it is creating more, it's creating that erosion, it's creating form, it's creating more, a channeling and pathways and stuff for the natural ground and the natural earth as well. So it's like you have to see it like those attributions that come in that way too. Not only that, I think also when we're looking at Mars, that Mars can be also like intellectual energy. Like sometimes when we have that physical energy, or we have like that Martian feeling, like of that
Instinct.
needing to assert, needing to do, a lot of times that could get channeled into mental or intellectual activities, thinking up inventions, or like even just kind of like the mathematical processing, or just some sort of like engineering in some sort of way. I think that's also like a Mars Uranus aspect in that sort of sense, dealing with like software engineering, or just people that do mathematics and technology and stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's that, but it's also that Mars is not only just the warrior and the way we spoke about it too, but it's also the hunter. Nowadays hunting would be more so as like, I got to go out, I got to work, I gotta make money and stuff like that. I'm not happy if I don't have this and stuff and shit. So we may not have to necessarily hunt for food and stuff like that, but the Mars archetype within us still demands that thrill and that challenge of the hunt of whatever we're going after. Maybe some people it's real low frequency based, and the hunt of that woman or that sexual desire and stuff like it too. But it could be those other things, like learning to acquire those skills of some sort, and whatever thing that makes you feel most alive in that sort of way. But even just no matter what, it's that challenging aspect of trying to purposely get towards a goal. It's you think of the glyph of Mars too. It is that symbol. It's like the arrow fired from within the circle of the sun.
Yeah, because Mars also could be referenced as the use of weapons in war, right?
Yeah.
It also could be survival, but it could be not survival and instinct in the fashion of like just surviving war, but self-motivation, right? Like your self-motivation, what drives you in direct situations to really take action to accomplish. Like you said, go hunt. Well, the hunt wasn't for just to kill the animal or just to kill or just to use the weapon, but it was to feed the family. So it was to be the provider. So it's, when we say go to war, it's not really go to war, but it is to take on their survival and motivated instinct to take on a challenge, to then do something good or to win some, you could look at it as winning, but it's more domination or accomplishment would be. That's why it's funny. Mars loves being in Capricorn. It's exalted. Why? Because it's trying to accomplish something. So when Mars is traveling through Capricorn, it's exalted and it's in its favorite spot to be, because that's kind of the end goal of Mars, is to take, any situation, even if it's competition or not, and to come out on top, or to get what it is that was desired in a sense.
Yeah. To overcome that intention, and to prosper with it in that sort of way.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I think that's a good way to really understand in that sort of sense, especially when it's easy to get lost in the whole, the aggressor, the warrior and stuff like that. Like really, really dig deeper into even the more heart aspects, not just the real root sacral, type of survival energy as well too. You got to think about that there is a mental and emotional factor that comes into play, even if it's just how the emotion needs to be handled through that quick way of needing to think of whether it's to survive or to protect or to provide or to conquer, in that sort of sense. Like there is more of a calculation towards it.
Right. And a healthy expression of it, right? You can have your negative expressions, which could be, cruelty, aggression, lustful would be good, Scorpio, right? Ruthless, um, a volcanic, like a volcanic explosion is a great, symbol for the expression of it, which is like a volcanic emotional force coming up from the underworld, I guess, right? Scorpio. So yeah, I mean, if it's expressed in a healthy way, it's our basic physical strength and power center to really conquer the thing that we're trying to conquer to get what it is that we have desired from the start. Because Mars takes on the role as what we have on the inside, and we're driving it into the outer environment, right? And we want to take that and assert ourselves in a healthy way to then go get that thing, right? And in the unhealthy way, we could see a lot of that. And it's like I said, it's ironic, but right now, not only do we have the nodes transitioning into the Aries archetype and to be ruled by Mars for the next 18 months, but we also have had the wounded healer Chiron in Aries, which is ironic because if you look out in the world, you have the Andrew Tate situations, you have the transgender situations, you got, Kevin Samuels, all the energy of that masculine trying to bust through, pun intended. But like, yeah, it's with the wounded healer there. I would see it as it's trying to heal itself, but with healing anything, we know that when we go through a healing process, all the bad shit has to come out. And when I say bad, I mean the unbalanced and unhealthy expressions. And that's why I would expect, maybe within this time period that's coming with Mars being the ruler of the North Node, to see the unhealthy side of it try to come out. And then at the same time, see the healing start to really come about probably within the next 2 years.
Yeah, it can't just be, fighting fire with fire all the time and stuff too. I think that kind of like surpasses or like kind of bypasses, I should say, more of the required healing maybe that needs to kind of go on too. Like not really taking that chemical reaction stuff, because let's remember too, Mars would be Scorpio as well. So that is water, but it's more of that applied heat and that chemical reaction to kind of bring that to a roaring boil, and that would create some sort of steam as well too. So there is some transformation from the depths of the water and stuff to kind of emerge into a new form in that sort of sense too. So you could kind of look at it elementally in that way. But yeah, but not even just the waters, the liquids too. And also let's remember that Mars also is, its metal rulership would be iron, and iron is a big point of maintaining our blood, and the blood is what keeps the body alive, and it holds all the nutrition. It holds it helps bring everything to where it needs to go into the body as well too. It takes that initiative all the time and stays in constant circulation,
right?
And there can be the deficiencies. It's what keeps our immunity as well and stuff too. And you could probably also look at your chart and to see when somebody has a debilitated Mars, they may have something like sickle cell anemia, let's see, a low iron and stuff like that. That you'll see those with people with Mars placements that are more so in its detriment or its depression and stuff, or the fall. Like you'll see more so of that into people. So that even requires an action too, where you're going to need to strengthen the blood. You're going to need to strengthen the transporter, the carrier and the transporter of all the things that keep the minerals and nutrition to keep all the rest of the parts of the body alive. And that same could be metaphorically with the fact of just even how you need to even take action and take root and take transformation as well too. If you're going into something carrying no sort of sense of nutrition or value and stuff, and you're trying to bring it into a certain situation just by pure force and pure will, but none of that other stuff to back it up, then it's just going to be empty, and you're not going to get that desired outcome.
Yeah, and you said related to iron and blood. Iron
Mhm.
oxidizes the blood and it makes it red, and Mars
Mhm.
is the angry red planet, right? So it's the same iron in the hemoglobin that creates our blood to actually be that color, and it happens to be that expression of it. So it's another way to put it too. With your saying on the inside is, with Mars taking action, getting the job done. That's what the body's trying to do in the blood and all that. And ironically, by the way, I have Mars Pisces, but in the fourth house, ruling, if you want to say the mother, right, or the home and the roots. And I actually have a lot of, I think it's Mediterranean anemia. I think it's called.
Yeah. Yes.
My
My
grandma,
mom, Hashimoto's disease, stuff like that. Yeah.
yeah, my grandma
Mhm.
has it, and I think my mom might have it, and she sleeps a lot. And I even have ups and downs. I've never gotten tested for it, but it wouldn't surprise me if having Mars in that placement, um, especially with it's so funny with the fourth house, right? Roots and family to be passed down the Mediterranean anemia or some kind of blood imbalance or lack thereof, right? Of nutrients and
Mm.
all that other stuff. So yeah, I
Low
definitely can see
platelet
that.
levels. Yeah, for
Sure.
sure. I would like to see, because it's weird, because both my mom and her brother, so both my mom and my uncle, they have that same thing. Um, and yeah, it'd be
Ironic,
interesting to
right?
see,
We have the same Mars.
because I don't think, I'm trying to think if I ever, even too, like with Mars and Pisces, if I've ever had, um I mean, I remember one time having a low platelet count or something like that. But yeah, I mean, and once again, I think it has to do with a lot of other things, and play coming into play with it, and especially if something is pulling on that energy as well. Because also Mars does act as a draining, like even draining of abscesses and stuff like that too. You think of using the iron scalpel to cut an abscess to drain the pus out of it or something like that. It's
Mm,
if that
right.
figuratively in that way. Let me let this cat out because he's meowing up a storm.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and so where do you have your Mars in your chart? Where does Aries sit in your chart? All important things to look at when you're thinking about all this stuff. And like we had went through last week, going through the elements. And I think that's one of the most important things you could do, especially if you're more of a beginner at this stuff. But seeing what elements or what element that your Mars is sitting in, and whether it's in water or whether it's in earth or air or fire, and it's going to tell you, what is going to be the best elemental way to express yourself and to express your desires and all of that. Where with water, I feel like a lot of it's going to have to be with your emotional state, your inner world, the inner feelings. It's more of the scorpionic take is going to be more of an impact on how your Mars works and on all of that. And then with Earth, it's more about the practicality and stability and how much earthly sense it makes and all of that. Fire being what lights the passion. It's going to be really about what gets you going and all of that. I think those are going to be more sexualized types of people, more competitive types of people. If you look at a lot of athletes and stuff like that, you're going to see a lot of Mars ninth house, 10th house, Mars first house, the fiery houses and realms, or even the signs. And so, where is it that yours sits in? And when you take the element, you're going to really find out. What was I missing? Air, right? So, Mars in air would be someone I feel like would go to war with words, someone who wants to fight the battle, a politician, someone who wants to debate, just like having the Mercury, right? Where you have Mercury Aries, which is Martian ruled, right? So, we talked about it a million times already. You're going to want that fiery debate and you enjoy that. Same thing with the Mars in an air sign, Mercury being ruled by Gemini. But yeah, where does that energy really, function in your chart? And you're going to find out exactly what it is you need to be prepared for it and how to take action. And then it's going to be your strength and it's going to be your power center. Yeah. So
Mm,
very important.
yeah, definitely. And it's true. And also, um, a lot of people with Mars fire placements tend to have some sort of background in either firefighting or pyrotechnicians and stuff too. I bet you, and especially when pyrotechnician and stuff like that, you could probably see some type of um, play on with even that Uranian structure with Mars, possibly too with the fire Mars. But yeah, and it's crazy how you could see those people, like people with those certain placements just alone by the elements and stuff. But then when you go into each element and break down, see the signs, you could see like the difference where it's like Mars Aries is probably like to, the firefighter rushing into the fire and everything and stuff, like that too. And then you have maybe, the Mars Leo might like to, that I feel like that would be more so of like the iron worker and being creative in a sort of sense, and like kind of using in that forging of things as well. And yeah, I mean, we could go into all of them and stuff, but
yeah, I mean, yeah, and it's simple, right? With then, especially because you look at the modality too, and all of that. With Mars and Leo, someone's going to be so fixed on themselves and their sense of identity, and they're going to fight for their own sense of identity and to be seen and and that's how they're going to take action. Real bougie, I feel like. I know a Mars and Leo girl, and bougie. I'm worth this, and I'll let you know that I'm worth this. That type of energy. Mars Sag, I could see definitely being more of like someone who's on the idealistic side, where they're going to fight for their ideals and they're going to fight for outward expression. The preacher who is,
the activist,
God, God. So, this is from God. So yeah. I told you, it's the elemental view of all these things is just such a real hack to see, just the basics of someone. And then when you color it in with the signs, you really get the details. I'll read an excerpt as well of from that book, same book, Essential Astrology. I love it. It says, Mars is often referred to as the war planet, painting a picture that Mars is aggressive and conflict seeking. But Mars is not inherently aggressive, as it is a style of expression that can vary given the sign in which Mars resides. When the potential for conflict arises, it is Mars that we call upon. So in that way, it is the war planet, but not because Mars inherently wants to initiate war or loves war necessarily. Mars is built to defend and attack, but our reasons for engaging in conflict are as varied as the signs and houses in which Mars may reside in. Basically, a lot of what we just said, right? When what we want conflict with what another wants, Mars can settle the issue, but whether it does so by negotiation, aggressive attack, or surrender all depends on the sign through which it expresses. Even refusing to take action is an action. It is an act of will, right? And that's, I hate to bash us, but that's Mars Pisces, right? The passive aggressive, like, oh, how can we make this as easy as possible so we could just kind of get it over with? And, I don't really want too much conflict here. And if we do, it arises and then it teeters real quick. I speak for myself on that, but I'm sure you feel the same way.
And I definitely, I think because also like that is also showing that like a negative effect from that could be like that, just like, you're staying calm on the outside, you're showing that, but it's fucking exploding and boiling everything up within you and stuff, and that leads to destruction. And it's funny, I think that even just shows even position wise in the chart, like if Mars is below the horizon, for us it would be on the relationship side of the chart and other people side of the chart, and it's like more so the action oriented kind of goes more inwardly about towards the person and stuff too, and kind of more so we kind of see, or like the willful, way we want to kind of proceed with things or assert ourselves, or maybe we feel blocked from those things, or that's a big concern.
It's funny, before we started recording, we were talking about things we were, we just catching up and all that. We do, because we don't talk all week, but Gio went to the workplace and kind of dealt with a little bit of a Martian type energy. And it's funny because in my, not that my family or my home life is causing it, but I am experiencing the Martian tension of things have to change in my home or in my inner world, right? Meaning my home as my vessel, my body, or my inner world, because I have it in the fourth house. Gio has it in the sixth, right? So fourth would be home, roots, your inner security, all of that. And as soon as someone or something starts to really affect that, my Martian energy comes out, where Gio in his workplace, in his service to others, right? You wanted to be a firefighter. and you also work, you work in the food industry, but you work in the service industry, sixth house, and you deal with a lot of conflict when it comes to the people you work with, sixth house ruling coworkers. So it's ironic, of course, just like last week when we were bringing up Venus, it's like that energy is in the air, and the universe itself preps us for these talks, and it was absolutely relevant to it. How funny, right?
Yeah. And it really is though, because look at it, even like where the desire and the will was kind of like, oh, I want to be a firefighter. Like, yeah, but it was like that was like being like held back from me to be like, no, you can't. So what ended up coming out first and being done, where it was like, of course, it was like, oh yeah, you're more so of the fire energy is going to come out more in pursuing of the cooking and being in that culinary realm and stuff like that too. And it's like that's constantly in your face too. But also on the more like, oh, wanting to be a firefighter thing, it was like that still got put down below on the tier, and it was more so of the Venus aspect came out of the first responder, where I was like, well, EMT, more so it's like it's close, but it's more of the nurturing thing, not the go in there, put out the fire type of thing and stuff. Even though Venus is in that Mars ruled sign,
right? Well, and Venus being in Aries is responding to that Mars, so it's just ironic. So, and also ironically, right? Next paragraph says, just as Venus has been stereotyped as a planet representing the feminine, Mars is associated with the masculine. This has been interpreted in the past as a division, with Venus being synonymous with women and Mars with men, artificially dividing the two planets along with the two genders in tidy boxes. Older astrology texts often reflect the zeitgeist in which they were written, stating that Venus in a man's chart will dictate the kind of woman he is sexually attracted to, and vice versa for women, essentially encouraging a given gender to disown the opposite one and project it onto someone of the opposite gender. The terms masculine and feminine, though, can be useful in understanding the Mars-Venus planetary pair, but only if we understand the symbolism at work outside of the strict literal definitions. The masculine energy represented by Mars in this sense is the pursuing, outgoing type of energy, as the yang to the yin of the yielding, receptive energy of the feminine. So, and that's why I love this style astrology, and this is evolutionary astrology. The whole like literalism is just not, it doesn't serve anymore. Maybe in the older ancient astrology and traditional astrology. That's why even like, I know that there's that little bit of like, I won't call it a battle, speaking of Mars, right? Or that like, you got traditional astrologers and you got traditional astrology, Hellenistic, and then you have evolutionary and Uranian and all the modern stuff. And I hear a lot of the traditional astrologers always say like, oh, modern rulers is what I like to ignore, in a way, like don't ignore it. They don't really fully bash it, but they're very consistent in like, oh, we stick to the traditional way. But to me, all the new astrology is bringing out more of the archetypal, the less of the literalism and the less of the fated aspects of it, of this is what it is and all that. But like it brings that more expansive and broad view, like stepping back 10,000 feet and seeing it as an energy and all of that. And that's the way I think it's healthy to see it. And so, yeah, Mars isn't just men and Venus isn't women, but it is the outgoing force and the pursuing, opposed to the receptive, receiving, and the inward desire of something. So yeah, very, very interesting. And it's funny, we were just talking with you about your Venus Mars.
Yeah, that's true though. That's why you're about the whole traditional thing versus modern. Like it is true though, if you think about it, like we do need to have those, that we do need to have to come into, and that's what we're seeing through more of like the modern astrology is coming to that awareness of the evolution of, application, and kind of being able to,
right.
bring out those different aspects and through different viewings, and it becomes more personal. It helps you think outside the box.
Becca Tarnas said this, speaking of, right, the Tarnas family, she had said astrology or anything like this is always seen through the lens of the culture, right? So at that particular time, certain planets and certain symbols and they had their expression and to suit that era in time. And so now as the culture changes, as the times change, it's time for things to evolve and not stay the same as well when it comes to even a science like astrology. So I'd rather see the progression. I'd rather see things kind of alter and shift, and according to what the culture is actually, because like, it's context, right? Like you have to take into the context of the times we live in to really fully integrate and make useful of something like this, so you can actually apply it, opposed to like just sticking to the Saturnian tradition of, oh, this is how it is and this is how it always was and all that. And that's how I kind of always felt from the traditional Hellenistic people, right? Like, not that maybe they don't mean it, but I do see the Saturnian authority of like, no, this is the way it was and this is the way it is and this is the way it will always. And Uranus coming in with the age of Aquarius and also being discovered most recent, right, in the past few hundred years, is like, okay, time to break that up and time to bring in this new evolutionary mode of astrology and all that. And that's why would consider myself more interested, and as I become more of an astrologer, would be the evolutionary aspects of it.
Yeah, big time.
One more excerpt from this book, and this is Mars in Action, and it's going to give a little bit of an example of everything we've been talking about. So when Mars is found in Scorpio in the natal chart, it often indicates a person who is intensely driven by their passions, who wants to take everything they do to its deepest potential and beyond. They will never be satisfied with half efforts or careful actions. A person with this placement favors courageous, borderline destructive, breaking through their own barriers action that makes them feel most alive. When they get angry, their reaction is strong and forceful, which can consume them, and they may sometimes take extreme actions fueled by the depths of their emotional response. So you see right there, the fuel of their emotional response. It's because Scorpio is Mars, so it is that inward, like, oh, like it's got to be intense, it's got to be this and that, and Scorpio is there to do that. And that's why, if you know both, and this is where the traditional comes into play, if you know the inward and outward expression of Mars, not taking into account Pluto, who is the modern ruler, yeah, you could totally see the Martian. You could see how they got it, right? You could see how why they defined it that way. So with Mars and Scorpio in the seventh, say, this intensity is directed into relationships, seventh house being relationships, an intense need to connect deeply, not superficially or casually, with one or two significant people in their lives that they can build trust with. They may be at risk for overwhelming significant others with their intensity and sometimes possessiveness, especially if the partner needs more breathing room in the relationship than Mars and Scorpio does. They give and require loyalty and transparency for those they love in order to trust seventh house them. By contrast, if Mars is placed in Scorpio in the second house, that intensity and all or nothing approach will likely be directed into their achievements and building resources. Second house is big for me, so I totally get that. Building a strong resume, literally or metaphorically, can provide an important sense of personal power and strength. They may be at risk for pushing themselves or situations too far in order to combat any insecurity that they may feel about their abilities or worth to prove themselves to others and themselves. Second house being the Taurus ruler, being value, being finance, being resources, being skills, and all of that, and that Martian intensity being that in their own way of expressing who they are and the actions they take. So, yeah, very interesting. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, definitely. I like that. I mean, especially with, it being Mars being Aries and the self, like you just said, like it is, feeling that need to show that worth and show that value with that Mars and second house placement. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and to sum up, right, it says, so you can ask these questions of Mars in your chart, and the sign in the house in which it resides will reveal the answers. So what motivates you to take action on something? In what way do you go after what you want? How do you express your passionate nature? What turns you on? In what ways do you defend yourself when hurt, scared, or angry? What kinds of things make you angry, and how do you show it? How do you handle yourself in arguments or confrontations? And how do you prefer to release pent-up energy? And for us, right, how do we release pent-up energy? I think a lot of it, Piscean, quiet, meditation, disassociation, right?
Let it fizzle out.
It's Mars and Pisces it's not a fall aspect and all that, and it's not a bad one. It's very neutral, but it's in water, so Mars doesn't like to be in water. So you could say it's more of that negative expression of Mars, I guess, if you want to say it that way, which I don't believe positive, negative for signs. I feel the expression is what's positive or negative. But yeah, and if you would go through the signs, you could see how do you Mars and Aries is going right to war, right? It's going to go fight the war and the battle. Mars and Taurus, real quick, let me throw this in, and I think I've mentioned this before, but Mars and Taurus, right? So
Mm.
I know someone with that's an three people with Aries rising. Two of them have Mars and Taurus. One happens to be landscaper. Taurus ruling gardening, farming, all of that. How does he take action? How does he make his money? It's in landscaping, which is, going and I guess if you wanted to say this metaphorically, going to war with the grass and the weeds and making his money that way. So it's amazing. It's amazing to take other people that and to apply this is probably sometimes more fun or more enjoyable than it is looking at yourself.
Yeah, it definitely. Then you get to see it more so firsthand, and like it you're not focusing on yourself, so there's not going to be that internal fight necessarily, that major attachment to it to be like, oh, I'm so like that, like just right away attached to something, or right away like totally being like, that doesn't resonate at all. Looking at it from the outside kind of gives you a little bit more wiggle room. Looking at other people and other situations.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And another trick for anyone looking into charts and stuff is to look at where Aries and Scorpio is in your chart, and that's going to have a lot to do with your relationship to your Mars, right? Because and it's ironic, right? My new thing, right? My newfound love for reading charts is seeing the pattern show up over and over again in different forms, right? So it's funny. I have Mars in Pisces, and Scorpio rules the 12th house in my chart. So obviously there's an ongoing thing to be a spiritual warrior or to be someone who fights for the ideals of spirituality and stuff. So I thought you could look at that too. Wherever Aries or Scorpio is in whatever houses they rule is ruled by that Mars. So you can make that connection. So I love doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have the third house ruled by Scorpio, and that's also the house of communication. And I know that
Mercury,
a lot of
Aries.
things could get, and it could get either real tense or heated type of communication styles, or totally misconstrued and misunderstood, and muddying the waters, and like that wasn't the intention, and that frustration builds up internally and becomes its own type of form of aggression in some sort of way.
Right. And with Pluto and Scorpio as well, muddying the waters, Pluto being the sewage manager, right? Having that sewage I know that you have it in the second house, I think, in your equal house chart. But still, Scorpio still rules the third, Mercury and Aries being Mars. It's obviously you have there's a focus for you. So, but I see you got your book out. What do you got for us?
So I thought this was kind of interesting as far as looking at Mars, especially since constantly it's always talked about like this aggression side and stuff like that. But this is from the Archetypal Universe by Ren Butler. But he kind of mentions about how they've actually encouraged that type of and why that type of energy and why. So at times, old style religious texts even seem to encourage sectarian aggression with terrible consequences for everyone involved. In holotropic states, by contrast, people learn to withdraw their aggressive energies from the social sphere and aim them at transcendence, represented in the physical world as the space above one's head. Once the commitment of full expression without acting out is made, clients in sessions are able to express and release enormous amounts of aggression from their psyches, consuming it from a finite pool inside them and decreasing its effects in their everyday lives. From the transpersonal side, we might suggest that Mars represents the universal mind's own urges toward action and adventure, one of possible motivations for its creation of the material universe. I'll stop at that because then he starts quoting something that somebody said. But yeah, I think like that kind of reminds me of even in those what do you call it? Plant medicine type shamanistic, healing things that people do. A lot of times it brings out that, and they encourage that to bring out that pain and that aggression and like, or the sexual trauma or something like that. Like, and you see, and they encourage that reaction, whether it's the screaming, the yelling, convulsions happening and stuff like that. And and it allows them to kind of, after that is exuded, to kind of go back in, like it was saying, in that finite point, and find it in this pool. And now that they've kind of like, we're able to take this outer experience of it and get around all of that pain and that hurt and that negative reaction towards whatever it is that's hurting them, they can now address it in some sort of way. So I think that is, instead of just trying to, I just think that's just another key to being like, hey, just don't avoid. Don't just avoid, the pain, the hurt, the aggression, the anger that you feel and stuff like that. Like, confront it. That's going to be part of the Mars energy too, is to have that willpower to want to confront and overcome fears or pain or whatever it may be, or malice.
Right. Beautiful. Well, I think on that note,
yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah, and that's it
right along.
Yeah, and that's it for the personal planets. And we'll be jumping into Jupiter next, which begins the social planets of Jupiter and Saturn. Right. So yeah, that's next on the list. But we appreciate you guys for hanging around. Like, subscribe, comment, send some support, send some love. You'll get one more episode, I believe, before Gio embarks on his journey to Italy. So wish him good luck, and I'm sure he's excited. Right?
I'll root myself and preparance for Jupiter. Wait,
and you leave on the day that the North Node goes into.
Wait, am I going to be here for? I keep forgetting. Am I going to?
Oh, then you might. Yeah, maybe you don't get another episode with them, and whatever.
Yeah, I don't think so. Okay. But yeah, there you go. But I will be going into more of that Jupiterian Sagittarius side of it, and I'll try to engulf myself with that and
bring it back so you can talk about
expand on a higher. Not to mention, where I'm going, there is a lot of old sacred temple sites that I will be going to visit that were in homage to, say, like Venus, Mars, and Jupiter.
Yeah. So very nice. Just stay the hell away from France. That's the big. Yeah. Just
not going there. I'm going to be in an island in the middle of the Mediterranean.
Well,
a giant
I'm sure
mountain.
you're gonna have a great time, and it's like I said, ironically, you're going on the day the nodes shift, so it'll be fun. All right. Yes. Well, I'm definitely happy for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. But anyway, all right. Thank you for listening. Like I said, share, subscribe, comment, do all that fun stuff. And Gio, before we go, anything else to say? Some last words? That's it.
Stay golden, stay level-headed, and like this whole thing is, find that inner healing and power to kind of transform yourself through this awareness and really play out the archetypes in your own psyche, in your own world that you're in and stuff too. And allow yourself to get lost in that, but recognize that you're not really lost, because you're actually taking action and awareness and stuff. And if you feel like you need to do more, like, this is action enough.
Right. Pioneer those new grounds. Get lost so you could pioneer and find new things, right? About yourself or about the world.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thanks again, guys. And until next time.